things like the turn times and what our PARs were. And we actually did set up, we knew what our heavy volume months were, so after our first year in the unit, we actually worked with, through the unit-based committee to set up what the difference would be our PAR levels to our lower volume months versus our higher volume. And we tracked that by our turn times. And in that facility, we did have a unit scanning system, which was helped us with our inventory control, and it was helping staff to understand why that was there, because we went to the, charge versus non-charge items, all the stuff that you go through, and helping staff to understand it wasn't necessarily a charge, a patient charge, it was an inventory control mechanism, so to make sure that they had the stuff there when they needed it. And I think you made a very good point early on, are some of the items not available because this is a short-term issue, or is it a long-term issue for us? And I know in my current facility, we recently opened a patient tower. We went from 30 ICU beds to 47 ICU beds, and we moved patient populations around. We determined initial PARs, but then, the open heart unit now is getting some longer-term thoracic cases, which they didn't get before. So we had, the staff had to go back and work with the unit-based person from our materials to say we need to go back and relook at our unit PARs. But it's helping staff to understand that language and sharing that information with them on a routine basis. I mean, I really, as a unit manager, can't, emphasize that enough. We need to get them to start talking their lingo a little bit.
Great comment. Any other questions before we move on? Yeah, Karen?
This is one of my real big pet peeves. Do you know any tricks about how to prevent loss of product? How do you get things from not walking away?
Really, the only way to do it is through RFID or sometimes the technology that tracks where the equipment and things are stored. As an emergency room nurse, I'm going to tell you a little bit of what we used to do. When we knew things were short, we would stash them places because we knew that we were going to need them, and we didn't want to not be able to get to them when we needed them. So, there were some ID pumps in the ceiling tiles, and there were some ID catheters in the lockers. I mean, and as a nurse, I thought I was doing the right thing because I was making sure I had what I needed for the patient. But now that I've taken a much broader view at the supply chain products and equipment, I realized that that cost my facility a lot of money. So the way to overcome that is you have to have a tracking mechanism of some sort, and the staff have to feel comfortable that they're going to have what they need when they need it. So if you're not, as the materials manager or the sterile department are not providing things in a timely manner and they're not dependable, then you're going to have things that are stashed. That's just the way it is because the staff don't trust the process. So you've got to set up a process that's efficient, and then you've got to get that credibility so the staff trust that process.
One of the things that our health system did at each of our hospitals as we went to the conversion a year ago is they did develop something called a safety card, and it is still housed in our supply area, and it has a list of every item, and we put, with myself and managers, and we got our off-shift coordinators, house supervisors, whatever you may call them, to actually work with staff on what would be on that cart, because it actually had to help supply the ER and our inpatient areas. And so it is something that the house supervisor has access to on the off hours. But, we do, the thing we're struggling right now with is because as most supply chains have gone to, Friday stocking to last you till Monday afternoon, is the stockpiling of boxes in your supply areas. And recently, because of the number of isolation patients, it's typically isolation gowns. We have isolation gown boxes stacked up on Friday afternoon. And so we recently had to go back to the drawing board with them, with our support of our CNO, and what can we do differently? You know, this is a Department of Health violation. You know, we cannot continue this way, and it's helping the supply chain to understand that. I think the other things that we have done, you know, because recently was kind of funny, when we went through our first conversion, the ER was always short on urinals. You know, people don't think about that, you know, but you get a lot of ambulatory patients in the emergency room, you're using urinals, and they were starting to steal them from the other units. You know, they'd walk away, and so when the inpatient units needed them, they weren't there. And it was a matter of, you know, once again, you know, I think it's an interval evaluation of any new process and making sure you're going back to the table with them to say, okay, this isn't working. But I think each organization has to know what their obstacles are and what you need to do to sit down at the table together and fix it.
Let me ask this. How much sense does it make to have perhaps the supply chain manager do some rounds in the critical care areas and vice versa? Or based on today's, you know, economy and hiring freezes and whatnot, is that more a luxury than a sound strategy?
We've recently gone through we just went up on our electronic health record. We were, you know, kind of in line with our health system. And that actually, some of the features of that has helped our in-house supply chain management. And so you know, we did have some cuts about 18 months ago in that department. And once again, when we went to the standard conversion, we did lose some additional staff. But with this new implementation of our electronic health record, it is actually going to free up some time for one of those personnel. And so we've talked about them routinely rounding, not particularly the manager perhaps, but one of the personnel in that department routinely rounding to address issues at the real time with staff. And I think it's, you know, that's something new we're going to be starting here within the next week or so. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I think it's also going to put, I think as somebody referred earlier, it's going to put a name to the face, them get to know individual staff more than just the unit leadership. So I'm going to be real curious how this will work for us. So.
I think rounding is extremely valuable, and those organizations who do rounding really reap lots of benefits from it. I believe that the return on investment with rounding is very good. I believe that, you know, yes, you have to spend some time doing it, but the time you're going to gain on the back end is well worth it. Having said that, there are some facilities who feel that they cannot do the rounding because of their constraints with their staffing. When that's the case, there have been some more global types of rounding that occur. So there may be a roundtable meeting of the nursing leadership and the supply chain staff to have, and I've heard them termed gripe sessions, but I look at them as process improvement sessions. I mean, this is really a chance for the supply chain to hear the concerns and issues that the nursing staff are facing and vice versa. So, you know, if you can't do rounding, then the next best thing is to have some kind of a meeting on a minimum of a quarterly basis where voices can be heard on both sides.
In our organization, the structure of the supply chain is such that there is a sort of a frontline manager, if you will, that's over the staff that directly stocks our unit. So that manager does make rounds, maybe not daily, but at least 3 times a week. That gives us an opportunity. She just sticks her head in my office, asks me if there's any problems that I'm aware of. Of course, then we go back to that communication point where, you know, I really have to be aware, the staff have to make me aware. But I've also tried to be proactive in empowering my staff to speak to her directly, or my unit coordinator or unit secretary to feel as if she can email her at any time, and she does. If we're continuing to have a consistent problem with a certain item, and she just copies me on that email and they keep me in the loop. But, you know, certainly they're the ones that need to be finding the solution to that problem, and her coming around is very helpful in that.